Afternoon. I want to start, if we can go to the next slide, I want to start by just helping kind of frame this work, sort of stepping back to a little higher level and framing this GSP grant opportunity in the larger investment going on in our state in young people, and the opportunity with this to create some coherence in our college and career readiness efforts for students. And by building some rigorous pathways that are preparing kids for both college and career. And that's one of if there's one overarching kind of theme that we want to hit, it's that and. It's about creating students who, when they leave us, when they leave high school, are prepared to take the next steps in their journey and their transition to adulthood, to career, and figuring out what they need to do and want to do academically and in their career. And they understand all the opportunities that are out there and available to them, and are prepared to create a path for themselves. And so just wanted to sort of highlight that. And keep in mind that there are things like the big dual enrollment grants, there's community schools. There are a lot of initiatives out there that you may be doing and that you should be thinking about as you think about GSP. And so let's go to the next slide. And we just wanted to kind of share a little bit about the GSP grant itself. So it's $500 million. 85% of that, $425 million, is going to implementation grants. And we'll talk in a little bit about what the different types of grants are. 5% is for technical assistance to support you with implementation of your grants. And 10% is for planning and consortium grants. And again, we're going to kind of explain a little bit about those different kind of grants opportunities. But important to keep in mind, the bulk of the money is going to be made available for implementation grants. So if we can go to the next slide now. So in the legislation, it frames the required elements that the pathways need to have and that are supported through these funds. It identifies who the priority grantees are. So districts with, for example, higher than average dropout rates, lower socioeconomic levels, disadvantaged youth, and so the target populations. And it does call for an independent evaluation of the impact of your program. So that is something to keep in mind. And it encourages you, like I mentioned early, to think about how this fits with your other funding sources and priorities so that they are working together to address the needs of students. And it defines a 5-year timeline, which actually, given the way things are going, is actually, it's considered a 5-year timeline, but in reality, it's 4 years because it goes through 2028. So let's go to the next slide. So here's the framework, and you can see in these 4 boxes that outline the framework for the Golden State Pathways program. An integrated program of study, meaning that it includes the A through G requirements and then at least one other element of the college career indicator. And there's an opportunity for at least 12 post-secondary college credits. And both of these are explicitly stated in the linked learning framework, both in the GSPP framework and in the linked learning standards, which is one of the things we want to do with you here today, is to help you understand how the linked learning framework, and the linked learning framework is specifically called out in the legislation as an example of a high quality college and career pathway. And so we want to help you today understand, well, what does that mean? what are the principles and standards of a high quality linked learning pathway, and how do those fit specifically within the Golden State Pathways Program RFA. And so those first two are part of the linked learning integrated program of study. And then next is the full continuum of work-based learning. So from career awareness and exploration activities through more intensive internship and apprenticeship opportunities. And those are very much aligned. If you've seen the linked learning standards for high quality pathways, you'll see that there are 3 strands, and the 3 strands are the integrated program of study, work-based learning, and the integrated student supports. And then finally, the integrated student supports in the GSP RFA is to demonstrate and build structures and systems for supporting each and every student, regardless of what they come to you with in terms of their needs and their backgrounds, supporting their social, emotional, and their academic needs. So let's go to the next slide. And so what you see here are in these 9 tiles are specifically the outcomes stated in the GSP RFA. And so in your application, you're going to be expected to write a narrative for each of the 9 expected outcomes that you see here. And the color coding that you see here is how those expected outcomes align with the linked learning standards. So, for example, in the top 2 left-hand tiles, integrated program of study, inclusive of A through G courses and your early college credits, your 12 post-secondary credits, those are specifically aligned with the integrated program of study standards in the linked learning standards. And then the gold colored ones are all aligned with the standards in the work-based learning, within the work-based learning standards. And then the blue is the integrated student supports. And then in the gray are 2 expected outcomes that are more related to the grant, so the grant monitoring and grant reporting. So sustainable operations and meaning what you put into place, how is it sustainable beyond the life of the grant, and the data monitoring. So again, the data that you're expected to collect and how it gets reported out, how you're going to collect that and how you're going to report it out. So one thing we do want to say, which I should have actually mentioned from the beginning, sorry, is that we want to encourage you to ask questions. So I can't see everyone. If you want to either speak up or if you want to raise your little Zoom hand, we will call on you. And because we would like this to be conversational, we encourage you to ask burning questions that you have. Make comments for ideas that you have, the way that you've been thinking. If perhaps you've looked over the RFA, I suppose a lot of you have. And so thoughts how you've been thinking about things. And if you want to share that with the group, you're welcome to do that. One thing we would ask is that as we go through each of these expected outcomes, if you could keep your questions in the moment to that particular outcome or the topic that we are talking about. And other questions that you may have, if you'll just hold those to the end, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A so that you can address all of those questions. Okay. So again, please, we welcome you bringing up questions, comments, ways you're thinking about this that perhaps you'd like a little feedback on as we go through these. All right, so let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Esther, for this one.
Thank you, Dan. And we'd also like to thank the Tehama Humboldt County Offices of Ed for inviting us to this. And I would also like to appreciate my colleague Dan, who we share the same positions. We're vice presidents of the Link Learning implementation. And I wanted to just give you a quick background. 30 years in Los Angeles Unified School District, and of those, 5 were as principal, and the rest of them as running the CTE Link Learning program, with Link Learning being a key component of that, having 82 Link Learning pathways in LAUSD. So we're available to answer questions for you all about that. What we're going to do next is basically go through the narrative. In the narrative, which will be Appendix E in the application, you're going to be asked to write on each of the 9 that Dan identified. So let's go to the first one. First one is high quality integrated program of study. On the left-hand side, you will see the language of the Golden State Pathway Grant. And on the right, you will see the Link Learning standards and how they match up to that. So you need to show how you're going to do your integrated program of study, making sure that you have pathways that address both the academic and the CTE program. And hopefully cohort your students in that way as well. Any questions or comments? Then we'll move on to slide 2. Outcome 2. Post-secondary credits. In the grant, you need to have 12 post-secondary credits applicable towards the completion of a degree or certificate or credential. And those can be accomplished through AP, International Baccalaureate, agreements with the post-secondary and articulation or dual credit. Next slide. And so you're going to see a quick 4-minute piece on, this is a Link Learning pathway in LAUSD that shows the benefits of integrated teaching and learning.
STEM. Before we adopted the Link Learning philosophy, when you looked at our test results, troubling. But 3 years ago, we adopted a new philosophy. We decided we wanted to connect our academic program to a career pathway.
That's AP Cal. Oh, and there's biomedicine. It's supposed to be our lab journal. We're supposed to only use pen because you normally don't erase your mistakes. You just learn from them.
You are proof that this experiment is working.
I thought I wouldn't have to study to be an engineer until I'm in college, but I'm doing it in high school. So I was actually a bit excited about it. It's like I get an early head start.
That believing in students can yield the results that we're looking for.
That's what makes them so cool. I won't have to struggle in college. I can struggle now.
All I asked is if we worked really hard, if we could just somehow hold that line, if we could keep it in the 80 percentile at 83 and 84. STEM, take a look at the data. Tell me what you think. Come on, guys. Don't be late.
I think what you would see in a typical high school is a math, science, English, history, Spanish class. And all 5 of them would be operating separately, no real connection. What makes this a linked learning school is that we're linking all of those subjects together through a career pathway.
We are officially launching the project-based learning, the one that goes through every class. You guys remember that? Do you know in New York how there's a Central Park? We're trying to bring that same thing here. A lot of people found the funding, they found the area. We're gonna cap the highway and we're gonna put a park over it. The juniors and seniors are working on building a design. Your job is to create one part of the design. A themed footbridge. You are now in the second semester of 9th grade. We're gonna ask more of you.
I'm a little scared. It's a big project in like a short amount of time. My brother was studying becoming an engineer. My dad was also an engineer. And I mean, I just don't want to disappoint anyone.
It is important for them to leave the campus. That is the linked learning experience. You're connecting the academics to the real world. So our 11th graders and 12th graders start to take on mentorships and internships and work with career professionals.
I got this internship. The Friends of Hollywood Central Park nonprofit, they're going to build a park and it's going to be in the freeway, under the freeway, so that they can link these two parts of the city together. It's going to change the way we look at Los Angeles. It's always been my dad, not one who says, you know, become a professional. I remember talking to my little brother. We're like, how are we going to help them when we're older?
What's it gonna be like leaving STEM?
I really blocked that out of my head because as a senior, I would think about it and then just shut it down. First semester ended and I applied to several colleges. You're always supposed to feel nervous when you're gonna move out and do something new.
So how do you predict graduation day would go?
Really sad.
What we've seen since we adopted the linked learning philosophy is huge engagement. I mean, we are absolutely preparing our students for careers, for colleges, but we're also just struggling with graduation rates, with some of the issues that you face in this neighborhood, and engagement pushes us all the way through that. My students are ordinary kids having extraordinary experiences.
Thanks. So I thought we'd spend just a minute or two. What are the benefits of integrated teaching and learning that you saw?
We have increased student engagement in the chat from Alana.
Okay, thank you, Alana. Next slide. So outcome 3, work-based learning experiences. Again, on the left side is what's in the grant. Right side are the high-quality linked learning standards. Ensuring that students have strong work-based learning experiences, a continuum of them, and hopefully also internships and apprenticeships and opportunities to earn industry certificates. Feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat or raise your hand and we'll be glad to chat with you. Next slide. Integrated support services, ensuring our students receive both academic and socio-emotional support. Questions or comments about that? Okay, thank you. Next. and that you need industry-connected pathways, that your pathways are connected with industry and students have an opportunity to interact with industry experts. Next. An opportunity to interact with industry professionals. Celia?
Thank you for attending the Hollywood Central Park 11th grade engineers final presentation. We'd struggled for a long time in creating a real-world experience for our engineering students until I met Lori Goldman.
The name of the organization is Friends of the Hollywood Central Park. We are responsible for building the Hollywood Central Park. Hollywood Central Park is a 38-acre green open space deck park in the heart of Hollywood. Once the park is completed, we would manage and operate the park.
Lori Goldman, she was the one who kind of linked Friends of Hollywood Central Park to what we were doing. She brought them into the school this year.
They got a grant for paid internships, and I said, terrific, give me 4.
Our principal got me involved. He just said, get on Lori's good side. At first it was like, is this really going to happen? It started getting real when the money came in, I guess. You know, and you're like, okay, this is a real job. And just being an intern was a privilege. It is a privilege and an honor to be there because you get to be a supporter of something that's going to be great.
We expose them to things they never would have seen. In a typical high school and without the STEM program, they never would have been exposed to every possibility that's out there.
My name is Lori Hunt, and I'm the instructional coach for STEM Academy. In classrooms, they have all of these hands-on activities in medical and engineering, but the partnerships and the internship opportunities that we get from being a linked learning school is what hooks them.
So tell me really briefly what's going on this morning in general.
It's a Link Learning conference. They want to know the true stories of Link Learning students firsthand.
So remember just to breathe and take your time. Every sentence that you say is important, and everybody needs to hear it.
Wait, what do you feel, Armin?
Like there's some weight on my chest, a little bit, like pressure, anxiety, stress.
So I got some intel about the people here, but there are probably high school principals here, but for the most part, they're the government. They're at the government level and the state level. Okay.
I don't see myself as a role model at all. Basically, when I was growing up, I didn't really have one. My brother cycled in and out the juvenile system. I don't want that to happen to me. I want to be able to support myself and my family and make something out of my life.
My dad, he came from Guatemala. He is an engineer at heart, even though he can't become that because he's supporting us in different ways.
I'm very proud of you and your brother because, I mean, things that I couldn't accomplish in my life, it will be a great satisfaction if you can leave something good behind for this country and the world.
Welcome to the first ever statewide Link Learning Convention. I'm very, very happy now to introduce Ruben Ruiz, a senior with a focus on biomedicine. So Ruben, welcome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ruben Ruiz, and I'm a senior at STEM Academy of Hollywood. My school helped me gain important experiences outside of the classroom. Last summer, I had a paid internship at Kaiser Permanente in the gastroenterology department. I strongly recommend you to go to a Link Learning High School because it definitely worked for me. Thank you.
Had he not had that experience outside the classroom, Ruben might not realize his dream of being a medical professional.
In a big way, me and my brother are their shadows. We speak for them because they can't. Maybe in the future, when we have everything together, when me and him are finally professionals.
My parents always reinforcing, like, don't end up like your brother, go to school, do this. Like, basically save the family. They see what it is.
Okay. And next slide, please. Outcome number 6 is articulated pathways. Again, working together with those business partners and post-secondary to create a well-sequenced study program and program of study, and ensuring that you are meeting industry standards and competencies along the way. Next, please. And building it collaboratively. Again, working with your industry boards, working with your regional employers, working with your higher ed. And number 8, outcome 8. Dan?
Mhm. All right. So for this one, we're focused on, oh, there you go. 8 and 9 again are related to the grant operations. 8 specifically is the ongoing operations. So this is concerned with sustainability, and this is where you have the opportunity to connect this grant and program with your other initiatives like your CTIG grants, if you have K-12 strong workforce, if you're a CPA, and any other kind of funding programs and sources that you have, so that you can demonstrate the strength of your program proposal in terms of it connecting to with other objectives, initiatives that you have going on, as well as then how it will be sustainable beyond the life of the grant. And then outcome 9 is maintaining the data records. So that's where you're going to discuss how you are going to collect data, track progress over time, how are you measuring success, and then how are you using that information to make data-informed decisions. And if we want to go to the next slide. Esther, did you want me to do this, or do you want to do this, or does it matter?
Go ahead.
Okay. So at the very beginning, I mentioned the different kinds of grants, the consortium grant, the planning grant, the implementation grant. And again, 10% is set aside of the money is set aside for consortium and planning grants. A consortium grant is if you want to collaborate with other LEAs, so with other districts or a community college on submitting a grant. And in that case, you are perfectly able to apply for multiple. So you can be part of a consortium grant, still apply for implementation or planning grants. But you can't be putting in, if you're putting in multiple applications, you have to make sure that they are for distinctly different purposes. You can't be, applying for money for the same thing in 2 different places. Okay, so that's a big consideration here. And with the planning grants, those are for really getting new pathways off the ground. So not an existing pathway that you just want to beef up or make a little stronger, but one that you're getting off the ground. You can apply for a planning grant. They are for up to $200,000, and they are good through June of 2025. And then you are in line for a implementation grant automatically. I mean, you will have to provide some paperwork, some reporting on what you are going to do, but CDE will set aside money for an implementation grant for you if you are awarded a planning grant. And then for the implementation grant, that's up to $500,000 per pathway. And so that's something to be really cognizant of. It's per pathway. So it's not per school, it's not per district, it's not per implementation grant. You can have an implementation grant for multiple pathways. They need to be of a similar industry theme. But it can be multiple pathways at $500,000 each. And again, if you have any questions on these, feel free to speak up, put them in the chat.
Can I just, hi, good afternoon. So 500,000 per pathway, and you said that's per application, that's not per site. Did I mishear that? If I have 3 schools, it's 500,000 per pathway. If I've got 1 school, it's up to 500. If I've got 10, it's just I want to make sure I'm understanding that. Did that make sense?
Yeah, so it's 500 per pathway. So let's say you had one school with 2 pathways and you were including both pathways in that, then it could be for $1 million. If you had 3 schools and the 3 pathways were spread over the 3 schools, 1 at each school, you could do it for 1.5 million. Is that your question? Is that right?
Yes. So basically 1 pathway, you'll get funding for up to 500,000 per pathway per district. It sounds like the way you're stating it. That's fine. That's perfect. I appreciate it.
Sorry, just a clarification, up to 500,000 per pathway per school within a district.
Correct. It's per site. That is correct.
Well, those are 2 radically different answers. Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
First or second, folks.
The second one was correct. So it's per pathway. So if you have a school with, if you have a district with 3 schools and it's, say, just the same pathway, 1 pathway in 3 schools, that's 3 different awards, 3 different $500 awards.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question too on the of clarification. You said if you're writing one application for multiple pathways, does it have to be within the same industry sector or?
No.
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 Right. Originally,
it was
did.
Originally.
It was, as of last week, yes. And then
it switched.
Early this week, they made a change. And these changes are not reflected yet in the RFA or in the FAQ, but there was a CDE did send out a clarification notice that you can submit an LEA, which is the district, can submit for multiple pathways across multiple industries in a single application.
And that's for both planning and implementation?
Yes. However, just to note, the budget form and the budget narrative, you essentially have to have outline all the budget items for each pathway.
And I believe they're updating those forms, right? So you should wait because they'll be updating the forms on the website for those.
Okay, so I'm imagining then the new forms will have, so you could line it out for one pathway and then for another one?
Well, the way that the new form, so the original plan was that you would have to submit an application for every single pathway, individual pathway separately. And then obviously the CDE got a lot of feedback and started to make changes. And so that's why the form now is, as Dan said, getting changed. It should be issued in the next day or 2. But the way that the form is, it's by code. So for code 1000, as an example, budget code 1000, you would have to put for each pathway at each site what your expenses are for budget code 1000. And so if you've got 15 different pathways across 3 schools, you would basically, and they all had a code 1000 budget expense, you'd have to put each of those 15 amounts, and then you would move to the next budget code. And that's how it's done. So it's not really, it's going to be by budget code and then by pathway and by school.
Hey, this is Jack Bareilles with out in Humboldt County. Can I ask a question? You mentioned just the Excel spreadsheets, and I'm assuming these will be similar to the CTIG, the community schools, all the others. But I've run into a problem repeatedly the last number of times is that when you insert lines in there, then the formula that pulls it over the front starts to go just all over. It just it breaks down. And so, can you put in a word when they build this? If because we're going to have multiple, you could have multiple lines of 1,000s, multiple lines of 2,000s, 3,000s. Heaven help us in the 4,000s and 5,000s. I feel confident there'll only be one for 7,000. But that being said, if they don't build it from the get-go, it's going to go sideways every time we do that. So can I put that plug in and all? Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, next slide.
Can you, sorry, this is Sandy
Sure.
Dale. I'm in
Go
Humboldt
ahead.
County also. Can you explain a little bit more about the planning grant versus the implementation? Do we, if we want to do, my question is, if we're thinking we don't have the pathway yet and we're looking for planning grant money as well as implementation, is that still one single application?
That's correct. You just put in your planning grant, and that they will then reserve the money aside for the implementation grant. And even the budget is filled out just for the planning.
And when would we
Just for
do
the 200,000 maximum?
when would we then do the implementation grant? At the end of, how does that work?
After a year.
Oh,
You
okay.
have a year to do the planning grant, and then you can move into the implementation grant.
Okay, and in the application though, should we show how the planning grant is going to lead to the implementation?
I'm not sure about the details on that, but you probably would, I would assume indicate how your 5-year plan will look, and at least hint towards it.
Okay, and then my follow-up question is, on a lot of these, like outcome number 4, 5, 6, looks like 7, there's a line there that says provide a work plan including a timeline and a description of the proposed activities. I'm just wondering, will there be a template that you would like us to use for that, or is everyone just free to stay within the 20-page maximum?
Well, you have to stay within the page maximum. And so I think that is a really good question about how you're supposed to do all the activities. I would think you're just going to highlight the biggest activities that you're going to do, because you can't, if you're submitting one comprehensive grant application for 20 pathways or 10 pathways, I don't know how you would possibly list all the possible activities that you do for those. So you're going to have to look at big picture, I think.
Okay, thank you.
A quick question I have here, for both the planning and implementation grants, it says up to 200,000, up to 500,000. Are those based, is there a funding formula based on ADA, or is there another way you are deciding those amounts awarded?
So CDE is making those decisions, just so you know, and I'm not quite.
Of course.
I'm not quite sure. I think it's going to go on number of students that you have that qualify, but I do not know the answer to that. Noemi, do you?
There is not a funding formula. There is vague language that says funding amounts can be based on number of students, number of schools, number of pathways, and you are required to submit that information. But at this point, everything we have heard from the CDE is 200,000, up to 200,000 for planning grants, up to 500,000 for implementation, and nothing more specific than that. I'm guessing they're adding that vague language to give themselves some wiggle room based on what comes in. But I know it is the CD's intention that the entire pot of $450 million is all goes out in one in this one process. So they don't want to hold any money back, and they have not provided a formula.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. So as you probably know, I've identified 4 priority sectors. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't include other industry sector pathways, but you need to make sure that you're proving the point that that is a relevant and important pathway that will lead to a high wage, high demand, high priority career for students in your regional area. So if you can do that, then I would say you're great, including that as well as the priority ones. Next slide. And we just put together some tips about what we think might help with your applications. Making sure that you follow the GSPP and make sure that you address all of those expected outcomes. And again, what I just talked about, the high wage, high need, high demand in your area, that you are clear that you have articulation or dual credit or AP or IB, and that you are working with colleges and moving that forward to get those 12 credits, and that you're ensuring you're cohorting to enable to do those cross projects, the real world projects and cross-disciplinary work. And that you also highlight your college and career support services. How are you supporting students both academically and social emotionally? And that you have a master plan for work readiness. How are you preparing your students to be work ready, including those internships? How are you offering them internships and industry certifications? And that equity for all students, that it's not a select group of students who are participating in this, but it is available for all students. All students have the opportunity for dual enrollment, for work-based learning, and to ensure that they have an individualized college and career plan. Next slide, please. So just to recap, the applications are due March 19th. We have not heard anything about extending that. I don't think they're going to, but we're not sure. The grant was announced on April 9th and appeals are due April 23rd. Next slide, please. Here are some resources for you, additional resources to assist you in preparing your applications. And are there any further questions or comments or concerns that you'd like to express?
Esther, I just want to point out that I did put our LTACs posted frequently asked questions in the chat. So it'd be a great source. A lot of the questions we get regularly are being recorded and they're on this list. So you might see some of the questions that you have posted there. So you want to check that out. And also I put the framework in, and I think Celia, you put the framework back in there as well in the chat. So it gives an idea of what those objectives look like in practice.
Great, thanks, Patrick.
I just want to also mention, Esther, at the beginning, I think in the chat, there was a question about whether there were other examples in the GSP framework other than the linked learning framework. They did call out the 11 essential elements, 11 or 12, depending on which you use, essential elements of high quality CTE pathways. But other than that, those were the only two specific examples called out in the legislation.
Are there any other questions regarding the process or anything about the application process between planning, implementation, or consortium? Perfect.
Patrick?
Yes.
I was waiting to hear if there were any other questions, but one thing I had a conversation with the LTAC leader this morning, and I think people are still trying to understand a single LEA application with multiple pathways across multiple schools, across multiple industries, how that is all going to fit into one grant narrative and be compelling and competitive.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's really a question of strategy. What I think when you're thinking about, do we just submit one application with all of our pathways, or do we submit multiple applications and, as Dan suggested, break it up by the industry focus, or whatever else may come? I would think about which strategy do you think you could provide the most competitive, compelling case for? Because one of the conversations I heard is if you submit multiple pathways, and let's say 3 of those sound great and one of them does not, there's a chance that disqualifies the whole application. Not disqualifies, but that the application is not awarded enough points in order to win. And so it is a tricky balance between, and how you organize the work in order to put yourself in the best competitive advantage.
That's a good point, Noemi.
Yeah, there's not a lot of room for your narrative.
Correct.
So it sounds like they're going to be really looking at the budgets pretty hard.
They're going to look at the budgets, but also if you've got stronger pathways and maybe other pathways that are sort of less built out, you might want to submit separate applications for them.
And I want to acknowledge another question that came in the chat, which I think is a good question. And it's how would we know if a program meets the required components? So, for example, get focused, stay focused. And so I think you could certainly use that. If you have something you're using that you like, that you want to structure this around, you can do that. All you have to do is you're going to have to make sure, be very good about alignment. So aligning it with the expected outcomes in the RFA. And you can use expected outcomes there. You can even use the linked learning framework designed with the RFA. But what you would just want to do is do an examination of your program and make sure whatever program that is includes all those elements and addresses all those elements that are in the outcomes and in the framework. And supplement too. I mean, I don't think you have to use, you don't have to say, well, you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket and say, we're doing this program. We're using get focused, stay focused, just use that example. And that's it. I think that you can say that's a core element of our program and what we do. And then here's how we are addressing some of the other outcomes that aren't specifically top of mind in our program that we use.
Any other questions?
I just want to point out again that both Jack Shepard, myself, or anybody that's part of our RTAC that you may know are available. Our numbers, our contact information are on the website the aforementioned website that we put in chat. So feel free to reach out to us. And also we are going to be having kind of office hours, scheduled time drop-in sessions for anybody in our region that can pop in at given times. And those are also on the website. And we could put that again in chat.
All right. Micheline has a question. Who is permitted to support with writing the grant? I don't think there's any requirements about who can assist you with helping you write the grant. That's up to you.
Well, our tax, we can advise.
Yes, right.
But we can't actually help write grants. Any other questions? Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Link Learning, and thank you everybody, our partners in the